Hi, this is Tom Salemi of Device Talks. Welcome to the Intuitive Talks podcast. Surgical robotics presents an enormous opportunity for companies. There are surgeon shortages, sporadic healthcare, and miraculous technological advancement in both robotics and communications. So to understand where this sector is headed, we invited senior executives from Intuitive to share their company's impressive story. Change is coming. Consider these upcoming episodes to be guideposts for the future to follow. Hi, everyone. This is Tom Salemi. Welcome to this episode of Intuitive Talks, powered by Device Talks. We're going to be keeping our eyes on the future in this episode and some upcoming episodes as well. Today, we're going to focus almost exclusively on Intuitive Ventures, which is a corporate venturing program that Intuitive announced in 2020. My guests today are Julian Nikolchev. He is president of Intuitive Ventures. He's also senior vice president of corporate development and strategy at Intuitive. And our second guest is Dr. Oliver Keown, who is managing director at Intuitive Ventures. He's leading up the new team. They've got 5 companies in their portfolio. We'll talk about them today. We'll talk about their strategy and what Intuitive Ventures means for the company's future going forward. So it's great to reconnect with Julian and Oliver. I spoke with them a couple of years ago on our Device Talks weekly podcast when they first announced the effort, and they have been busy, so lots to catch up on. Before I begin this episode, I'd like to tell you about an event that Device Talks is putting on in May. It's called Device Talks Boston. It'll be held at the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center, and takes place on May 10th and 11th. And I'm bringing it up because it's our first event that we've had, actually, that I've been able to organize since coming to Device Talks. I'm excited to be meeting up in Boston, but is also going to be co-located with 2 of our robotic events, including the Healthcare Robotics Engineering Forum and the Robotics Summit and Expo. So this is going to be a huge combination of events at the BCEC. I hope you will check it out. Go to devicetalks.com or roboticssummit.com to find out more information about these 2 events and about the Healthcare Robotics Engineering Forum. They will be very complementary content. I'll be focusing on medical devices, but also on surgical robotics. But you'll hear from a lot of great leaders in the robotics space and the healthcare robotics space at those other 2 events. So go to devicetalks.com or roboticssummit.com for more information. And if you decide to register, please use this code, DTW25. That stands for Device Talks Weekly, our other podcast, DTW25, and you will save 25% off the registration price of Device Talks Boston. So hope to see you there in Boston on May 10th and 11th. Now, let's begin this conversation with Julian Nikolchev and Oliver Keown. Well, Julian Nikolchev and Oliver Keown, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tom. Happy to be here.
We had you on my previous podcast. We had you earlier on my Device Talks Weekly podcast. That was 2 years ago, which in COVID time is like 5 years, dog years, or something like that. So we've got a lot to catch up on. Plus, you've been very busy. So would, though, like to revisit sort of your origins. And I always like to understand how folks found their way into the medtech industry. So Julian, maybe you could take us back to that first job in the medical device industry that started this terrific career.
Oh, I don't know if I want to start. That's in the previous century, but it's great to see you, Tom. And we've known each other for that long, probably. But so my origin is really starting at SRI a long time ago and starting to look at medical technologies at SRI around the time when Intuitive was being considered by Fred Moll. So I've had that long connection to Intuitive indirectly, at least from the beginning. And then since then, I've been working mostly all in the medtech space, working at Target Therapeutics originally, taking their technology and spinning out a company called Conceptus that was focused on women's healthcare and contraception. And then from there, moving into another company with Susan Love that was focused on breast cancer called Product, and several other startups, most recently an orthopedic company, Pivot Medical. Basically, what's interesting and what brings me to Intuitive over time is that most of the companies I've been involved in have been focused on bringing minimally invasive or less invasive technologies to the healthcare space. So in most cases, taking an open surgical procedure like Target Therapeutics, developing coils and guide wires and catheters to access deep brain malfunctions, aneurysms and arterial venous malfunctions. And in the breast cancer area, we focused on detection of breast cancer by accessing the milk ducts. So that's been a theme in my history, at least, which led me to Intuitive.
I'd forgotten about the stint at SRI. I'm just curious, how involved were you with the intuitive technology at that time? Were you aware of it, or were you actually working on it?
I was aware of it.
Yeah.
I was working in the new technology group, which was different than the development research group. And the research group was developing the robotics technology. So I was pretty well aware of what was going on and the direction they were taking. And I did not meet Fred actually until after I left SRI and started with Conceptus. And then he and I worked together a little bit to see if we can collaborate in women's healthcare.
Interesting. Okay, great. And Oliver, your turn. I know you're a physician, so I don't know, did your interest in medtech follow your interest in medicine, or did you get interested in medicine because of an interest in medtech? How did that all come together?
Yeah, it started, as you say, started off across the pond in the NHS back in the UK as a physician. Spent a couple of years there. I'd always been super passionate about, entrepreneurship and startups and technology. And that kind of drove me from the clinical side of things into more of the technology and policy side. I moved out of clinical practice and joined the Institute of Global Health Innovation at Imperial College, where I was working on a really broad portfolio of healthcare policy, translational medtech, device and digital translational projects out of academia and industry partnerships, which was a wonderful training, across those different aspects, and set me up, I think, pretty well for the step into venture capital with GE Ventures, which was a nice place to kind of go from the macro of the policy of the clinical need down to the minutiae of the science and the technology, investing there with the team across the life sciences tools, devices and digital. And from there, made the transition 3 years ago to join Intuitive and join Julian, Dave Rosa, and the leadership to help launch the new venture investing efforts, Intuitive Ventures.
That's terrific. We'll talk about the particulars of Intuitive Ventures in a moment, the size of the fund, talk about your portfolio. But Julian, I wanted to talk a bit more broadly about the program or the umbrella that Intuitive Ventures falls under, the Future Forward program at Intuitive Surgical. It's a great time, of course, to be looking forward as a surgical robotics company. There's so much going on in this space. I feel like we talked about this 2 years ago. Like I said, I feel like over that time, I've learned probably about 2 or 3 dozen surgical robotics companies. They're just all over the place now. So tell us about the Future Forward program. What is its intentions and what is its structure and design?
As everyone knows, Intuitive has now 3 platforms on the market. The Da Vinci, the multi-port, the classic Da Vinci, if you will, the 4-arm Da Vinci, the single-arm Da Vinci, which we call SP Da Vinci, and the Ion, which is an interluminal access and navigational platform for a focus on the lung. Those 3 platforms each have a very, I would say, well-designed roadmap for evolution of the technology from one generation to the next generation. What Intuitive leadership realized and started thinking about maybe 3 years ago, as I said, was the fact that while each one of these platforms has a roadmap going forward for the next generation, which is about 3 to 5 years, there's a benefit to think beyond that timeline, to think 5 to 10 years ahead and see how healthcare will influence potentially minimally invasive surgery, given that Intuitive's mission is to satisfy the quad aim, thinking about how we can improve patient outcome with minimally invasive approaches. So the real mission for Future Forward is to take a broad perspective on new opportunities, both technological and clinical and business opportunities that are in that 5 to 10 year horizon. And for that, we have kind of 3 pillars that we can use to engage with companies and to think about new opportunities. One is our business development activity. which is been around for a while, and the business development group is focused on improving the business development opportunity, providing business development opportunities to our current products, as well as identifying new business opportunities. We have the Intuitive Ventures that Oliver will describe in more details. And then we have also an internal research team that's exploring new technologies that are a little bit beyond our product life cycle timeline. So these are technologies around the corner that can influence some of our developments. So this way, with those three platforms, we can engage with the outside world through research, investments, and partnerships. So we have a lot of room in kind of an unusual way to engage with external opportunities.
Do those three programs run constantly on parallel tracks, or is there a lot of intersection and cross-pollination?
Yeah, well, clearly there is a cross-pollination to some extent, but we also have pretty clearly defined rules of engagement, if you will, with external companies. And for example, on the business development cycle, we would involve with projects that would be of interest to us from a business development point of view. So for example, they would involve a licensing agreement, could involve a joint development agreement, and so on. On the Intuitive Ventures, Oliver will describe pretty clearly, we have a different way of thinking about how to engage with external startup opportunities, including financial motivation for the team to succeed and make the Intuitive Ventures fund be financially successful. On the research side, we engage with a lot of research institutions. We actually sponsor a lot of research in universities and other research institutions, as well as work internally on exploring some new ideas.
Terrific. Well, Oliver, let's switch over to you. Let's talk a bit about Intuitive Ventures. I'm looking at the website, ventures.intuitive.com. Tell us about the size of the fund, first of all, and the strategy.
Yeah, it's fun to get a recap, 2 years in since we last spoke, Tom, on our progress and where we've got to. As Julian mentioned, our ventures effort really is about taking a financial lens and smart capital to go out and support and accelerate early stage companies beyond where Intuitive is today and in the ecosystems of minimally invasive care. That's our North Star, really accelerating the future of minimally invasive care. And I can share more about what that means and translates into as we think about the digital, the therapeutic, and the diagnostic categories that we invest in. But practically speaking, we're a $100 million vehicle, and we're investing at early stage seeds, Series A, Series B, stage companies, typically writing checks $500,000 up to $5+ million, and supporting those companies for independent success. As Julian mentioned, we do have very clear swim lanes as it relates to our venture investments. So when we deploy capital, we're really deploying that for alignment with the startups that we're investing in, the co-investors that we're investing alongside. We're not, pulling in strategic terms or trying to limit the optionality for those companies. We're really trying to accelerate them and bring them closer to Intuitive so that we can leverage some of the unique resources and capabilities and access that we have, within reach here, our customers, our KOLs, our experience, but really supporting them for that independent journey. Since we launched, we've made 5 investments to date. So a growing portfolio. A few of those are still in stealth mode and updates to follow in due course. But, per our website, a few of these here public and a pretty healthy pipeline of deals in the hopper just at the moment too.
Yeah, and I'd like to go over that portfolio in a moment. And looking at the website, I only see 3 names, 1 to be announced. So there's one that's super double stealth, I guess, not even to be announced on the website. And I do want to talk about the team as well, because it expanded. But first, the understanding of corporate investments now, one time back in the day, it would have been like, oh, this company will acquire that startup at some point, or at least is interested in possibly doing that. I think we've all moved beyond that point where capital can just be sort of a way to be engaged with a company. But what should an investment from Intuitive Ventures say to a company and anyone looking at that company, that you're merely interested in that specific company, or this is a strategic area for Intuitive at large? How should someone interpret or see that investment?
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, and it ultimately comes back to what is the driving philosophy for the venture fund. And at Intuitive Ventures, it is really about having that eye on the horizon and activating the important trends that we think are going to be impactful to our, to patients, to minimally invasive care broadly. So that means it's both strategic excellence and financial excellence in the deals that we are supporting. Typically, we'll look for a category, we'll define an area of import as a team and really understand the landscape, build a thesis, and then we'll only deploy capital into companies where we see, opportunity for great financial success, opportunity to be a category leader or a significant player in a field. So I think that's ultimately, where the best of corporate venture is going and what we try and embody here at Intuitive Ventures. If we're betting and supporting the best companies, I think that benefits the corporate parents. It obviously increases optionality going forward, but it's this nuanced way where to be a sustainable group, a sustainable venture platform, and to be the best partner to the startups and the most attractive partner, and longer term to the startup ecosystem, that we're aligned for the financial success. And me and the team that we've hired, who are both superstars and the ones that we're hoping to hire in the year or so to come, are excited about having that alignment with the startups so that we can really provide that acceleration to the field.
Julian, you were in the venture industry for a time. You were at Fraser for sure, working with them on several companies. I'd love your take on sort of on where Intuitive fits into the venture ecosystem.
I think what Oliver described actually is key to what we think would be the success of Intuitive Ventures. When you think about it, like you said, the typical, corporate venture group, it sort of has maybe in some ways a mixed role, the role of business development as well as the role of investment. And if one of the role is not fulfilled, then it becomes very difficult to sustain the activity going forward. So in our case, I think having clear swim lanes, the idea is that we want to be aligned correctly with the companies as we work forward. So on the Intuitive Ventures, as Oliver described, we can be aligned with the company to always enhance their success, enhance their approach to the technology, approach to the clinical need they're addressing. If we engage from a business development point of view, we're very clear about what our business motivations are for working with that company. And I think over time, that working this way with companies makes our engagement more successful, as well as I think it will continue to encourage for and enhance the ecosystem contacts that we have with the startup world. We inherently believe that a lot of the innovation in healthcare, as you know, is created by startups. Obviously, Intuitive was one at one time, and I think for us to play a role in the ecosystem is both not only to learn about some of the new things that are on the horizon, but as well as to motivate the innovation process. That's another aspect of our mission, which is aligned with, I think, what the venture capital firms would want to do. So
Sure.
We try to be like a venture capital firm.
Well, I can even see from the team, and maybe this is a good time to sort of talk about the team. Typically, back in the day, you'd see folks from within the corporation sort of take a stint in the venture capital role. Your team here very much comes from the startup world with connections to Stanford, Oculeave. Oliver, you were at G Capital. So Oliver, it seems like, and Julian, it seems like you really wanted to build a venture capital team as opposed to an intuitive team investing.
Yeah, and I think that's right. Certainly, we want to build professional corporate venture investors that
Sure.
really understand the hustle, the kind of deal process, the execution, the deal making skill set. Whether in the future that comes from colleagues that are within Intuitive that have the skills or the drive to join the team, or externally, but certainly in these two initial hires with Jofi and Vivian, we've got two superstars that are really deep in that startup clinical spaces, the biomedical engineering side with Jofi's background and startup experience, Vivian with the clinical Stanford Biodesign, MedTech incubator background. So excited for their development and the deal flow that they're being able to ignite across some of the fields that we're looking into, be it digital, focal therapeutics, or some of the diagnostic domains that we're diving into here.
Excellent. Well, let's look at the portfolio then. You mentioned the number. You've got 5 companies. As I said, I see 3 names on the website, 1 to be announced. But let's talk about the 3 that we're for that we can talk about. I think Keela Health, was that the first one that you invested in? Talk a bit about the portfolio and sort of where the lines connect to Intuitive, sort of near your areas of interest. And Oliver, maybe you go first, and Julian, you can sort of follow.
Yeah. I'll maybe start on the digital side, and we've got two investments in that space. Pretty rich pipeline that I think we'll be expanding upon in the future. But our digital thesis is really, what does that broader continuum of care look like for minimally invasive surgical patients? Where are there opportunities to unlock the power of data to accelerate innovation, better outcomes, the quadruple aim, as Julian alluded to. I go back to where's Intuitive's unique assets and capabilities. We have 25 years of sensors on the robot, 10 million procedures of data collected. We have this ecosystem of data partnerships and collaboration. For me, what does that look like as we think about the startup world and how they might engage and interact with these types of unique assets going forward? And so Keela Health, one of our digital investments, that's really about perioperative care continuum decision support, both on the clinical side and operational side, taking patient precision kind of decision support, algorithms trained on longitudinal data sets that are updated based on a patient's own care journey in real time to drive decision making that will enhance the patient outcome and reduce the cost of care. And so they're getting some fantastic traction. It's hospital customers as well as ASC customers as this integrated solution. Another startup in our digital portfolio more recently is a company we invested in called Flywheel. Mm-hmm. We made that investment last year. Really exciting, more mature company, Series C stage. And that is a data management solution, really a bioinformatics platform to accelerate AI development around complex data sets that might leverage imaging or video data. And really, they're looking to be the leader in this move towards data collaboration that we think is a pretty fundamental trend in the field. As the sovereignty of data between hospitals and life science and patients and physicians kind of plays out in real time, it's pretty clear that the collaboration between different data sets, different stakeholders is going to be critical. What Flywheel has is a pretty unique platform that can take complex imaging data sets and video data sets and facilitate that collaboration between stakeholders. They're making tremendous kind of advances in that field, which we're excited about, which we think is a pretty fundamental trend for the future. That's our digital portfolio today. I'd say we continue to be pretty excited about, decision support, analytic tools across the care pathway, but even through to things like care navigation solutions, the trends around consumerization of healthcare and some of the opportunities to leverage data across those domains. So we're pretty active and deep in the weeds with a number of opportunities and things in those spaces. I'll pause there, Tom, but that's kind of our digital side.
So that's the digital side of your portfolio. You have a few on the device side as well, Oliver. Can you give us some details on endogenics?
Yes, I can. Yeah, absolutely. So this really falls into our theme that we describe as focal therapeutics. So where we see the opportunity for access, precision, surgical planning, navigation technologies to really enable delivery of therapeutic payloads at the site of disease, or maybe leveraging access to biopsies, et cetera, on a care journey. We're really excited about what that means for therapeutic opportunities. And again, taking our venture lens to invest in some of those independent areas, we're looking at devices, we're looking at biotech deals in the cell and gene therapy spaces, immunotherapy, for example. But taking some of the deals we've done as examples, Endogenics, it is a company that's still in stealth at the moment, but it is leveraging focal therapeutics in the GI space to combat GI and metabolic disorders. So it's a really exciting example. I think you'll hear more of this company in the months to come as they make progress and announce some of their updates. We did make another investment. Again, this is stealth. It's the frustrating period that we're in where we've got a burgeoning portfolio but can't talk too much to it. But this other deal is really about bringing immunotherapy, oncology-based biotech therapies into the surgical setting in a very sophisticated way that we're excited about. And so that's another deal that will be announced in due course as they make their progress. But we're excited to support these types of companies that are delivering these therapies in novel ways. And Julian can certainly speak more to that broader thesis.
I can jump in and just provide a little bit of an overview on both of those themes, because what Oliver described is two significant themes that were influenced by what we see are trends in the healthcare, broadly speaking. So when you think about health data, as an example, data currently is owned by number of groups, if you will, governments, hospitals, individuals, surgeons. So collaboration among those groups to kind of have access to the data and to make sense of it is obviously something that's going to be very important. The other aspect of the data, given the breadth and the proliferation of different data, is using AI and machine learning as a way to make sense out of the data and also to inform and enhance the capabilities of surgeons to provide continual improvements in patient outcomes. So one can think about is coming together, providing information to the surgeons in real time, as well as the care teams around the surgeon that are supporting the patients throughout the patient journey. Those are the theme that is kind of influencing some of the decisions that we're making. And then in addition to that, when you combine the digital aspect that is growing, the digital capabilities that are growing with some of the analytics and some of the additional diagnostics capabilities, we're starting to detect diseases earlier in their progression. And we're also understanding the progression of the diseases better. So it's going to inform how we can influence treatments at a focal site. That's the kind of the focal therapy theme that Oliver referred to. But it's also bringing the treatment even less invasively, if you will, to treat the site in a way that could be potentially at a molecular level. Because now we are diagnosing diseases so early that we want to be able to treat it with minimal collateral damage. So that's are some of the major themes that are influencing our thinking about investments on the venture side, because they would basically inform us of the direction that technology can take, as well as the adoption cycles that will drive some of these clinical opportunities.
So looking forward, kind of wrapping this up, what does a successful outcome for Intuitive Ventures, at least at this stage, look like? In 3 to 4 years, will these companies have informed Intuitive to take initiatives internally to sort of meet those needs identified by these startups? Is it successful if these startups become part of Intuitive in some way through a collaboration or acquisition? What do you see as success at this point, understanding that things change, but what does the future look like in a few years for Intuitive Ventures?
I think first and foremost, Tom, it's having a really compelling portfolio of really transformative, impactful early stage companies that maybe are more mature because we've given it some time, that are really moving the needle for patient outcomes and the field of minimally invasive care. That is the benchmark, I think that we're trying to achieve. I think what that translates into is a very healthy portfolio financially that has achieved, what we would like to in terms of competitive financial returns, or at least kind of value generation at a portfolio level. On the strategic side, certainly we would love to see collaboration, engagement between some of the companies, or at least some of the thematics and areas that we're investing in having an impact on the fields that Intuitive is in. We purposely have defined success on that front broadly so that we're not holding ourselves accountable to a very narrow, set of metrics like acquisitions and partnerships and things like that, because we really need to look out ahead and invest in these companies that are trailblazing new paths. But we would love to see some of that collaboration. We do maintain a firewall between our venture efforts and the broader business. So, there's a nuance to that translation of insights and kind of understanding of the market to Intuitive proper. But that's part of the job of, the sophisticated venture arm, to provide that safety and security of information and support for those investments, as well as providing some thought leadership within the company for where the puck's going. But I think that's the kind of melee of success. More capital to make more investments would be the next order of business for sure on that front too, Tom.
And just to drill down on that one point, so the startups, the sole thing they're getting from this relationship, this investment from Intuitive Ventures is the capital investment. There's no guarantee of connections to the company or any sort of access to resources within the corporate.
So there is certainly access to resources, support fostered by the ventures team. There's no guarantee of partnership or commercial engagement or things like that. We really provide, as a team, the proximity, the interchange, the kind of introductions and facilitation to those types of conversations. We've already made some great progress actually on that front and continue to see that as an important proof point for the portfolio that we invest in. So as a team, they do get that access, they do get that support. But any actual engagement between the startup and Intuitive proper would be negotiated much like a startup interacting with a BD or corporate. And that's important. So it means that our venture equity, the ventures team are not conflicted, given we want to see and we're aligned to the financial success of the deals we're making. So that is, again, best practice, that's neutral third party where we help facilitate, but don't put our thumb on the scales too heavily as those companies collaborate and with Intuitive.
And Julian, final word to you. What does success look like from your perspective?
Well, I think Oliver framed it quite well. The one aspect that I would add to it from our broader perspective from Future Forward as well as from Intuitive is that one part of the success would be really enhancing the innovation ecosystem in the medtech space. And that is contributing to some technologies that potentially are not only going to benefit Intuitive, but benefit broadly, understanding progression, improving outcomes, progression of diseases, improving outcomes, and enhancing the capabilities of our customers, surgeons and hospitals. An example of that, for example, would be the multiple technologies that can influence or it can guide our understanding of the surgical tissue, for example, during surgery. Imaging technologies can be, in a varied way, provide different information and characterize the tissue that the surgeon is working on. So if we have a knowledge about the characteristics, about the tissue capabilities, that could be a good way to inform the surgeon about how to proceed with the procedure. And there's this is a whole ecosystem of technologies that could be developed in that area that could benefit in many different cases, not only in the cases where Intuitive is involved in. So a broader benefit to the ecosystem, I think, is an advantage. The other one, of course, is just really fundamentally aligning with our mission, which is to improve patient outcomes and support the quadruple aim that we referred to before.
Fantastic. Well, a lot has happened since we talked first in October 2020. So I'm excited to visit with you again in a couple of years and see your progress. Thank you. Thank you both for joining us on the podcast. And that is a wrap. Thanks again to Julian Nikolchev and Oliver Keown for joining us on the Intuitive Talks podcast. Thank you for listening. Please do tell your friends and colleagues about the podcast. You can subscribe to our Device Talks podcast channel, receive future episodes of Intuitive Talks and Stryker Talks, and our Device Talks weekly podcast. You can also subscribe to the Device Talks podcast channel on any major podcast player. You can find all of these podcasts and more at devicetalks.com. You can also find information about Device Talks Boston, which is coming up May 10th and 11th. Once again, it's co-located with our Robotics Summit and Expo and our Healthcare Robotics Engineering Forum. If you register for one event, you get to attend all three. So go to devicetalks.com, or if you want to check out roboticsummit.com, you'll see more information about those events. Hope to see you there in Boston. Finally, please do follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter at MedTechTom, on LinkedIn, Tom, Salemi. Find me there when you share this podcast episode on your social media channels, or if you just want to connect, I'd love to be part of your future medical device and robotics conversations. That is a wrap. Tune in next month. We'll have another great episode of the Intuitive Talks podcast waiting for you.